Right here, good morning, good night, good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. This is Jerry Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon and Flat Earth Homeland and all the other good stuff that I'm trying to get done. Okay, trying to get back into the swing of things. I had like a 4-night, 3-day expedition, and then found out I got back and, 4:30 yesterday, little family get-together over at my old stomping ground, so I zipped over to that, didn't get back from that till, I don't know, late, midnight-ish or 1 or 2 or something like that. Didn't get to sleep till 4 or 5, and then a guy, right before I went to sleep about 4, one of my subscribers said, hey, I'm going to be in Springfield, so I went in to see him today, and we had a great talk. I mean, we talked from about 5:30ish to probably 10, about 4 hours, good solid 4 hours. I just basically got home, helped Jersey do some Epsom salt bath for her hands. And BTW, note to everybody out there that has a brain and wants to keep it and wants hands that work and wants to keep them functional, don't hold your cell phone in your hand. You look at all the carpal tunnel sites, that's about 100% of the damage that's causing carpal tunnel these days. Has been for years. You're microwaving your tendons, you're microwaving your muscles, you're microwaving your ligaments, and you're microwaving your bones, and you're microwaving your blood. Don't do it. I have never, ever held this thing up to my head. You're microwaving your brain. Don't do it. Get a headset. Earbud headset, I don't care. Over the, headset type like gamers use with the boom. Get something other than holding the damn thing up to your head. One of the best microwaves, one of the best midwives in Missouri almost blew her hand off because she was talking to somebody, the phone was going dead, she plugged it in, bam, phone exploded, battery exploded. They will kill you. So, alright, just a word to the wise. A lot of people aren't wise and don't give a shit, but for those of you who do want to keep your brain intact and don't feel like microwaving it, nuking it, change your habit if you're doing that. You should be able to feel it. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I got a Bluetooth headset just for stupidity's sake. Put it on. I used it one time and I was like, oh my gosh, I could feel it. I could feel it irradiating my neck and my brain. So I stopped using it. All right, that's it. Enough rant, and I'm gonna get back into the swing of things and finish this up, and then we'll see what we're gonna go from there, or if we're going anywhere, because we'll see what happens with the world out there at large. All right, so bam, April 15th, Death and Taxes, take 1, part 1. Take 1. John Robert Horn, you are not taking our child to see that bloody circus. Fire flashed from Anne's eyes as she confronted her husband. Regretting having broached the topic, but resolved to see it through to its necessary end, John kept his voice low and steady as he attempted to reason with his infuriated wife. Anne, all I'm saying is she has the right to choose for her own self if she wants to go or not. She earned that right when she shot dead a man who was about to kill her father. Whether we like it or not, Melinda is no longer a stranger to violent death, and nothing you or I can do will change that. She was there. If it were not for the wholly unexpected and providential attack that her dog made upon Denny Redmond, he would very likely have murdered her after they had murdered me. I'm not saying I will take her to see his execution. All I'm saying is that I will offer her the choice of going or not. If she chooses to go, I will take her. Just her, not anyone else. In spite of our best efforts, the world thrust itself upon her and took away her innocence about violence and death. If she feels the need for this sort of closure, then it is her right to have it if she so chooses. Now, sorry about that, I forgot I can move that. Now, this is the end of the matter. I'm going to go out there and bring her back in here and explain her choices to her, and she will decide for herself without interference. He let out his breath in a long, slow exhalation, then turned and walked through the door. In the dining room, he found his daughter doing her homework with the other children of the household. Mel, may I speak with you a moment, please? He asked. The girl looked up, concerned about the grave expression on her father's face. Yes, sir, she said, and rose from her chair to follow him. In the bedroom, she found her mother plainly upset but silent and began to worry even more. Observing the emotions playing across his daughter's face, John quickly moved to assure her that there was nothing of which to be alarmed. It's okay, honey, you're not in trouble, and we're not going to tell you anything bad. I just want to ask you a question, and I want you to give me your honest answer, and that will be the end of the matter for now and forever. Do you understand? The girl nodded her head gravely. Yes, sir, I understand. At least I think I do. Her father smiled. Good enough. What I want to ask you is this. Denny Redmond, the man you testified against at his trial last month, is going to be executed today in Gainesville. If you choose to do so, I will take you with me to see him hang. It's your choice, and I want your honest answer. Neither your mother or I are going to tell you to stay or go. We want you to decide as you think best in this matter. Do you want to stay here or go with me? The girl said nothing for a time, but looked at her father, then her mother, then finally coming back to look at her father. If it's all the same to you, Daddy, I don't think I want to see Mr. Redmond be hanged. Her father nodded and said, Very well. It's your choice. You earned the right to make it. If you choose not to go, that is the way it will be. He bent over and kissed his daughter on her forehead and then said, Go back and finish your homework, schoolwork. I'll see you this evening. She looked at her mother and said, Yes, sir, then walked out of the room. When the door closed, Anne turned to her husband and said, Well, I'm glad of that. She's been traumatized enough without watching such a spectacle of death as those executions have become. John let out a long sigh. Darling, she made her decision, and the matter is closed. He crossed the room and took her into his arms and kissed her. No, I've got to be going. Carla's transfer should have cleared the bank by now, and I want to get it out, so I need to be moving. I'll be stopping by the salvage yard and some other errands on the way back, so if I'm not back by 6, don't wait supper on me. She crossed her arms sternly, but her face lost some of its harshness. I'd just as soon you didn't go either, but I know better than to try to dissuade you when you're resolved in your pig-headed stubbornness to go. Be careful. The weather service said we might get some freezing rain out of this front coming through this afternoon. Before you go, you need to sign the tax forms on the desk and get them into the mail postmarked today so they won't be late. John scowled. I swear nothing but nothing will ever hurt the government so bad that they won't have their hands out to get theirs. They should owe us this year, but you think we're likely to see any of that the way they're blowing it out their butts and the shape the economy is in? His wife just gave him a philosophical smile and said nothing. She'd long ago become accustomed to her husband's rants about the government, taxes, and anything else he felt impeded his ability to provide for his family. Seeing that his wife wasn't going to give him any satisfying reaction, he relented, smiled, then said, Yes, dear. I sure hope it doesn't go to freezing again. The ground looks like it's just getting dry enough to plow. He put on his coat and picked up his hat, then headed for the door. Outside, he detoured to go by the barn and check on the chickens in their holding pens. The first 2 attempts at incubation had been very disappointing, but after having Anne consult with one of the few remaining poultry specialists left at the university, they diagnosed the problems with their techniques and began to achieve acceptable hatches. They now had a couple hundred birds: Plymouth Barred Rocks, Buff Orpingtons, Rhode Island and New Hampshire Reds, White Wyandottes, Australorps, and Pearl White Leghorns, steadily growing large enough to turn out into pasture as soon as the last of the snow and ice had passed. He'd just that morning taken the Leghorns out of the brooder so that it could be cleaned and ready for the goslings he expected to get from Eddie Morgenstern soon, and the turkey poults he expected to take out of the incubator in another week or two. He'd been carefully explaining the ins and outs of poultry breeding to the children so they could start a program of weeding out the less desirable stock from their future breeding flock, and working in a number of biology lessons for their homeschooling efforts from it as well. He'd also promised birds to both Ed Strickland and Miguel Alvarez in return for loaning him several breeds of roosters he did not have to mate. He didn't have to mate with the same breeds of hens he did have. So far, the project was coming along quite satisfactorily. Reassured the birds were secure and content, he quickly looked over the milking stand and equipment. The girls did a good job of milking, but occasionally grew a little slack in keeping their equipment clean, which is a cardinal sin when using raw, unpasteurized milk. He checked behind them often enough to keep them on their toes. He also saw that he'd soon need to muck out the stalls again, which made his back twinge. I really need another pair of hands around here to do the heavy work. Share the heavy work, he muttered to himself. Now let the Hatchers have a place of their own. I ought to talk to Mike and Stevie about hiring him out part-time. Satisfied there was nothing needing his urgent attention, he walked over to his truck, got in, fired it up, and pulled out from under the shelter, moving toward the gate. As he was closing it behind him after pulling the truck through, he could see Jake, Andy, and Brad in the pasture basking in the sun. He'd been working with them for the past several months to try and improve their livestock guardian traits, but still wasn't sure if anything worthwhile was going to come of it. If it didn't, he'd already talked to a man down to Wilson about buying 2 Great Pyrenees pups from a litter due to whelp in another couple of weeks, and given him deposits on them. Losing livestock to predators was much more important now than it ever had been before, and he wasn't going to keep any more non-working yard dogs. They either pulled their weight or they got fed to the pigs. Except for Jake, he'd paid his weight in full forevermore. He hoped he'd managed to communicate this to Andy and Bad, but if not, their replacements would be along presently. He looked up at the sky as he headed north toward Archer, and sure enough, the gray sky looked pregnant with precipitation. Just rain, damn it, just rain. I've had enough snow and ice to last me the rest of my life. Another mile, and the first drops began to spatter the windshield, making him scowl as he turned on his wipers and lights. A few minutes later, he pulled up in front of Miguel's store, and the other owner came out and got in the truck. "Buenos dias, John," he said. Looking out the window at the rainfall, he continued, "Well, the weather seems to be appropriate for the occasion, no?" John shook his head. "Maybe it'll keep the crowd a little more somber this time. When Archie Lorne took his fall, I was a little appalled at the level of excitement." Miguel shrugged. "I have read that when public executions were the norm, that whole families used to watch and bring picnic lunches for the occasion. I'm glad to see that Melinda will not be there to see it." Heh. John gave a rueful grin. "Her mother and I had quite a battle over it this morning. I gave Mel the choice, and she chose not to. About what I expected, but I felt important for her to choose for herself. Your daughter is wise for her years, my friend. I am glad she will not be going. Were I not so unfortunately involved, I would not be attending myself, but I feel a certain fatalistic compulsion to take this matter to its final end." The truck turned onto Gainesville Road, and Miguel looked out across the field behind the bank, lost in his thoughts. All right, good night, people. Thank you all. Keep praying for me and everything that's going on. Don't know how it's all going to turn out, but we got some issues going down and on in Arkansas. I'll be very much praying for that. Pray especially for Brother Shannon. Some very, very serious issues are going on. Be praying for his protection and help and blessing, guidance. So, all right, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.